The massive screens in the Galactic Council's observation room flickered with images of a small blue planet, third from its sun. Senior Observer Green stood before the council, his tall frame rigid with concern as he presented his findings about this newly discovered world called Earth. Honorable council members, Green began, his voice echoing in the chamber. What you are about to see is deeply troubling. He gestured to his assistant, who started playing recorded footage from Earth. The screen showed a large stadium filled with thousands of humans, all shouting and jumping. Two groups of humans on a green field crashed into each other repeatedly, fighting over an oval-shaped ball. The council members watched in horror as one human tackled another to the ground. As you can see, Green continued, these humans gather in massive numbers to watch ritual combat. They call this particular ceremony football. He paused for effect. And this is not the only such ritual they perform. The screens changed to show different scenes. Two humans in a ring wearing gloves and hitting each other, others swinging sticks at small white balls, and more hitting balls with wooden bats. The council members murmured among themselves, their concern growing with each new image. Council Leader White raised a hand for silence. How long has this species been engaging in these rituals? For thousands of their years, Green replied. But there's more. The next footage showed humans gathering in even larger numbers, their faces painted in different colors, waving flags and singing loud chants. Some were crying, others were hugging strangers, and many were jumping up and down in what appeared to be either great joy or terrible anger. They call these gatherings sports events, Green explained. They divide themselves into groups based on geographical locations and compete against each other. The losing side often shows extreme emotional distress, while the winners display aggressive celebrations. Council Member Purple spoke up, her voice trembling slightly. Are they not concerned about injuries? Death? Green shook his head. That's the most puzzling part. They volunteer for these combat rituals. They train their young to participate. They even have special schools dedicated to these activities. The council chamber filled with worried whispers. These humans seemed to be a species that not only tolerated violence, but celebrated it as entertainment. How could such a civilization ever be trusted in the greater galactic community? Council Leader White stood up slowly. What do you recommend, Senior Observer Green? I suggest we establish a dedicated observation post, Green replied. We need to understand if these combat rituals are just the tip of their violent tendencies. We cannot risk making contact with a species that might bring their aggressive behaviors into space. As the council discussed this recommendation, none of them realized their fundamental misunderstanding. None of them understood that what they were watching was not ritual combat, but rather the human spirit of competition and unity expressed through sports. They couldn't grasp how these games brought people together, taught teamwork, and showcased the peak of human physical achievement. The council voted unanimously to place Earth under extended observation. They appointed Observer Blue to lead the study, choosing him for his reputation of being thorough and cautious. Blue accepted the assignment with a mixture of fear and curiosity. As the meeting ended, Council Leader White made one final statement. We must be very careful with these humans. A species that turns combat into entertainment could be extremely dangerous if not properly understood. The irony was lost on them all. In their effort to understand humanity, they had already made their first major mistake, judging human culture through their own lens of logic and peaceful cooperation, missing entirely the beauty of human competitive spirit and its role in driving progress and unity. Little did they know, this misunderstanding would lead to one of the most interesting first contact situations in galactic history, and teach them that sometimes the things you fear the most are the things you simply don't understand. Observer Blue sat in his hidden observation pod, hovering invisibly above a small coastal town on Earth. He had been studying humans for 3 weeks now, and each day brought new confusion. Today was no different as he watched events unfold below. The morning had started with what he assumed would be another example of human aggression. Strong winds and heavy rains battered the coastline, and the ocean was rising dangerously. Blue had seen enough sports riots in his research to expect the worst. Surely, such challenging conditions would bring out the violent nature the council feared. Instead, what he witnessed left him puzzled. Humans were working together, filling bags with sand and building barriers against the rising water. They formed long lines, passing the heavy bags from person to person. What struck Blue most was that these humans didn't know each other. They were strangers, yet they worked as one. Observation log, day 22. Blue spoke into his recorder. The humans continue to behave in ways that contradict our initial assessment. The same creatures who engage in ritual combat for entertainment are now displaying remarkable cooperation in the face of natural threats. He zoomed in on a particular scene. An elderly woman had arrived with food and drinks for the workers. Young humans immediately stopped their tasks to help distribute her offerings. They made sure everyone got a share, even those they had been competing with in sports games just days before. Most puzzling, Blue continued his log, is their ability to switch between competitive and cooperative behaviors. Yesterday, I observed two human males arguing intensely about their preferred sports teams. Today, these same males work side by side, protecting their community from flooding. As the day progressed, the storm grew worse. Blue watched as a small boat struggled against the waves. Without hesitation, several humans launched their own water vessel, something they called a rescue boat, directly into the dangerous waters. They risked their lives for strangers. Blue noted, his voice filled with wonder. The same species that tackles each other for entertainment will also face death to save others. This requires further study. Later that evening, as the waters began to recede, Blue observed another unexpected scene. The humans gathered in a large building they called a community center. They shared food, provided dry clothes to those who needed them, and even arranged sleeping spaces for people whose homes were affected by the flood. Most remarkable, Blue recorded, is their resilience. They have turned this crisis into what appears to be a social gathering. There is laughter, sharing of food, and even some of their young are playing games. They find joy in the midst of hardship. Blue's mandibles twitched as he composed his report to the council. How could he explain these contradictions? These humans who seemed so focused on competition and combat also demonstrated extraordinary compassion and cooperation. He decided to add a personal note to his official report. Honorable Council, I must express concern about our initial assessment of humanity. While their competitive nature is undeniable, it appears to exist alongside a remarkable capacity for altruism. During today's natural disaster, I observed no instances of the violence we feared. Instead, I witnessed countless acts of selfless assistance. As night fell, Blue watched the lights in the community center, where humans continued to help each other. A group of young humans had started playing one of their ball games in a corner, while adults organized supplies and comfort for those affected by the flood. Perhaps, Blue recorded in his personal log, we have been too quick to judge. These humans are more complex than we initially believed. Their capacity for competition seems matched by their capacity for compassion. The question remains, which is their true nature? Or is it possible that both aspects are equally true? As he prepared to end another day of observation, Blue couldn't help but wonder if the Council's fears about humanity might be not just wrong, but completely backward. Perhaps what they saw as dangerous ritual combat was something else entirely, something he was only beginning to understand. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with nervous energy as Observer Blue presented his findings. The large display screen showed various scenes from Earth, humans competing in sports, helping during disasters, celebrating together, and working in teams. Respected council members, Blue began, his voice steady but concerned. After 3 months of observation, I must report that humans are unpredictable. Council Leader White leaned forward. Explain. One moment, they engage in their competitive rituals with great passion. The next, they show remarkable kindness to strangers. They can be aggressive during their sports, but gentle with their young. They argue fiercely about trivial matters, yet unite instantly when faced with real threats. The screens showed footage of a recent event, a large fire in a human city. Firefighters rushed into burning buildings while ordinary citizens helped evacuate people and pets. Then the display switched to a hockey game, where players crashed into each other on the ice. As you can see, Blue continued, they seem to embrace both violence and compassion equally. This makes them difficult to categorize. Council member Purple raised her hand. Are you suggesting they are mentally unstable as a species? No, Blue replied quickly. Their behavior follows patterns, but these patterns are complex. Enough. Council member Red interrupted, standing up. We've seen all we need to see. These humans are clearly dangerous. One day they'd fight. The next day they help each other. How can we trust such an unpredictable species? Murmurs of agreement spread through the chamber. Council members shared worried looks and whispered among themselves. The evidence seemed clear to them. Humanity was too volatile to join the galactic community. Council leader White raised a hand for silence. What do you recommend, Observer Blue? Blue hesitated. I believe we need more time to study. More time. Red scoffed. While they develop space travel, we must act now, before they become a threat to galactic peace. The council erupted in debate. Some agreed with Red, arguing for immediate action. Others supported Blue's call for more observation. But all of them missed the fundamental truth about human nature that Blue was struggling to explain. Finally, White made a decision. We will send a diplomatic mission to Earth, he announced. But not the usual peaceful first contact protocol. Instead, we will test them. Test them? Blue asked, his anxiety growing. Yes, White replied firmly. We will show them our full military might. If they are truly peaceful, they will submit to our superior force. If they are as dangerous as we fear, they will reveal their true nature when confronted. Blue's heart sank. Honorable Council, I must object. This approach could be seen as hostile. Your objection is noted, White interrupted. But the decision is made. We cannot risk allowing an unstable species to join the galactic community without proving their peaceful nature. The Council voted overwhelmingly in favor of this plan. Only Blue and a few others voted against it. As the chamber emptied, Blue stayed behind, staring at the screens still showing scenes from Earth. They don't understand, he muttered to himself. They don't see that human strength lies in their complexity, not despite it. In his quarters later that night, Blue recorded one final personal log. The Council's decision to test humanity through intimidation shows that we are the ones who don't understand peace. The humans I observed could be fierce competitors, yet still show kindness to their opponents. They can fight against nature's fury while helping strangers. They understand something that we, with all our advanced civilization, have forgotten. That strength and compassion are not opposites, but partners. As the Council prepared their show of force, Blue could only hope that humanity's response would prove him right and the Council wrong. But he feared that the Council's approach would bring out exactly the reaction they feared most: humanity's full strength when threatened. The stage was set for a first contact that would change both humanity and the Galactic Council forever, all because of a simple misunderstanding about the true nature of human complexity. The sky above Earth darkened as 300 alien ships appeared in perfect formation. Their massive hulls reflected sunlight like artificial stars, creating an awe-inspiring but terrifying display of power. Humans around the world stopped and stared upward, phones recording the historic moment when humanity finally learned they weren't alone. Inside the command ship, Council Leader White stood proudly. "Send the message," he ordered. The transmission went out in all Earth's major languages, broadcasting on every available frequency. "People of Earth, we are the Galactic Council. We have been watching you. Your violent nature concerns us. Prove your peaceful intentions or face isolation from the galactic community." In the observation room, Observer Blue watched the humans' reactions through countless feeds. He expected panic, perhaps even the violence the council feared. Instead, what he saw surprised him yet again. Around the world, humans organized, not into armies, as the council had feared, but into something far more interesting. Within hours, thousands of human communication networks lit up with a single purpose: to show the aliens who they really were. What are they doing? Council member Red demanded, watching the strange responses pour in. Blue studied the incoming transmissions with growing interest. They're sharing their history. The first videos showed humans helping each other during disasters, rescuers diving into floodwaters, firefighters saving people from burning buildings, strangers forming human chains to save others from danger. Then came footage of global cooperation, international aid missions, doctors crossing borders to help during epidemics, nations uniting to solve environmental problems. This is propaganda, Red dismissed. They're hiding their true nature. But the transmissions continued. Humans shared scenes of daily life. Parents teaching children, farmers sharing crops with neighbors, volunteers at food banks, people helping strangers change flat tires. They showed scientific cooperation, space missions where nations work together, and global celebrations of human achievement. Look at this, Blue pointed to a particularly moving scene. They're organizing a global response right now. In cities across Earth, humans were gathering in peaceful assemblies. They held signs in their own languages that, when translated, all carried the same message: we are all human. White frowned. They still haven't addressed their violent tendencies. What about their combat rituals? As if in response, new transmissions began streaming in. They showed the Olympics, athletes from different nations competing fiercely, but embracing afterward. Soccer players from opposing teams helping injured opponents. Runners stopping mid-race to help fallen competitors. Remarkable, Blue whispered. They're not denying their competitive nature. They're showing how it brings them together. The council members watched in confusion as more footage poured in. Little League baseball teams shaking hands after games, martial artists bowing to each other with respect, basketball players helping opponents up after falls. This proves nothing, Red insisted. They're trying to deceive us. But then something unexpected happened. In major cities worldwide, sports stadiums began filling up, not for games, but for peace gatherings. Former sports rivals stood together. Athletes from different countries shared stages, and competitors from opposing teams united under a single message of peace. They're using their gathering places for ritual combat to show us peace instead, Blue observed, unable to hide his amazement. The final transmission came from the United Nations. A single human speaker addressed the council. We understand your concerns. Yes, we compete. Yes, we can be aggressive. But these traits drove us to excel, to reach for the stars, and to become better than we were. Our strength isn't in denying these aspects of ourselves, but in choosing when to compete and when to cooperate. We invite you to come down and see for yourselves. The council chamber fell silent. Their show of force had failed to provoke violence. Instead, humanity had responded with a demonstration of unity that none of them had expected. White turned to Blue. What do you make of this? Blue watched the continuing broadcasts of peaceful gatherings around the world. I think, he said carefully, we may have misunderstood humanity entirely. Perhaps it's time we learned from them, instead of testing them. The challenge had backfired. In trying to prove humanity's violent nature, the Council had instead revealed something far more powerful: humanity's ability to unite in the face of adversity, while still celebrating the very diversity that made them unique. After much debate, the Galactic Council agreed to send a delegation to Earth. They chose a neutral location, a public park in a medium-sized city, for their first face-to-face meeting with human representatives. Security was tight, with both human and alien forces watching nervously. Council Leader White led the delegation, with Observer Blue and Council Member Red flanking him. They stood tall and imposing in their ceremonial robes, their blue-tinted skin catching the sunlight. A group of human diplomats waited to greet them, all wearing formal attire and serious expressions. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. White began his prepared speech about galactic standards and peaceful behavior, but something unexpected caught Blue's attention. A small human child, perhaps 6 years old, had slipped past the security barriers. Her mother reached out to grab her, but the girl was too quick. The alien security team tensed, ready to act, but Blue raised his hand to stop them. He watched, fascinated, as the little girl walked straight up to White, completely unafraid of his alien appearance. "Mister," she said, looking up at the towering alien leader, "would you like some chocolate?" The formal diplomatic meeting ground to a halt. The human security team froze, unsure how to handle this breach of protocol. The alien delegation stared in confusion at the small human holding up a slightly melted chocolate bar. White looked down at the child, then at the chocolate, clearly unsure how to respond to this unexpected situation. "What is the meaning of this ritual?" he asked the human diplomats. The girl's mother had reached them by now, apologizing profusely. "I'm so sorry. She got away from me. Emma, honey, come back here." But Emma stood her ground. "Mom says when you meet new people, you should share. Chocolate makes everyone happy." She broke the bar in half, carefully wrapped one piece in its paper, and held it up again to White. Blue watched this interaction with growing interest. In all his observations of humanity, he had never seen something so simple yet so profound. Here was the purest expression of human nature, not in their grand displays of unity or their competitive sports, but in a child's instinct to share happiness with a stranger. What happened next changed everything. White, following some instinct he probably didn't understand himself, knelt down to the child's level, an act that made his security team very nervous, and carefully accepted the chocolate. Emma beamed at him and took a bite of her own piece, waiting expectantly. White studied the chocolate for a moment, then took a small bite. His eyes widened in surprise. "This is pleasant," he said. "It's better when you share it," Emma replied matter-of-factly. Blue's recording device was working overtime, capturing every detail of this historic moment. He watched as the tension in the air dissolved, replaced by something entirely new, genuine curiosity on both sides. The human diplomats, showing remarkable adaptability, seized this moment. One of them stepped forward and said, "Perhaps we could continue our discussion over lunch. We have much to share with each other." White looked at the chocolate in his hand, then at the smiling child, and finally at his fellow council members. "Yes," he said slowly, "I believe that would be appropriate." As they walked toward the prepared meeting area, Blue noticed something fascinating. The humans had set up their meeting space not like a formal diplomatic chamber, but more like one of their social gatherings, with round tables that encourage conversation. "Observer Blue," White called, "you've studied these humans. Tell me, is this type of sharing common among them?" Blue looked at Emma, now safely back with her mother, but still waving at the aliens, then at the humans arranging food and drinks for their guests. "Yes, Leader White. They share food, resources, knowledge, and even emotions. It's part of what makes them unique. They compete, yes, but they also collaborate. They fight, but they also forgive. They divide themselves into groups, but they also welcome strangers. And it all starts with sharing chocolate," White asked, looking at his half-eaten piece. "No," Blue replied, finally understanding something profound about humanity. "It all starts with being willing to share anything at all." The revelation was simple but powerful. Humanity's strength lay not in either their competitive or cooperative nature, but in their ability to choose between the two. And sometimes, as this child had shown, to do both at once. It was a lesson that would change galactic society forever. 1 month after the Council's revelation about human nature, the first official cultural exchange program began. The location, a renovated sports stadium that now served as both an athletic facility and an interstellar meeting center. Observer Blue, now promoted to Chief Cultural Officer, watched with satisfaction as humans and aliens mingled together. On the playing field, a peculiar scene unfolded. A group of young humans was teaching alien visitors how to play basketball. The aliens, with their longer limbs and better jumping ability, seemed to have a natural advantage. Yet they struggled with the concept of teamwork. No, a human coach explained patiently to a tall alien who had refused to pass the ball. The goal isn't just to score yourself. Sometimes helping your teammate score is the better play. Blue made notes in his new cultural database as he watched the alien reluctantly pass the ball, then light up with unexpected joy when his teammate scored. Another small breakthrough in understanding. In another area of the stadium, alien scientists were sharing advanced mathematical concepts with human researchers. The humans, in turn, were teaching the aliens about music, art, and something they called interpretive dance. The combination of activities would have seemed bizarre to the council just a month ago. Fascinating, isn't it? Council Leader White said, appearing beside Blue. He was wearing a human sports jersey over his ceremonial robes, a sight that would have been unthinkable before. Indeed, Blue replied, they're teaching us as much about ourselves as we're learning about them. They watched as a human child challenged an alien child to a running race. The alien, naturally faster, won easily, but instead of feeling superior, the alien asked the human to teach them how to play hopscotch in return. Both children laughed as they drew the squares on the ground. The council has made its final decision, White announced. Earth will be officially invited to join the galactic community. But more than that, we're implementing what we're calling the human approach across our civilization. Blue turned to him, surprised. The human approach. White nodded. Combining competition and cooperation. We've already seen positive results in the test programs. Sporting events between different alien species, competitive scientific projects that share their findings, cultural exchanges that include both traditional ceremonies and friendly contests. Across the stadium, a group of aliens was attempting to perform the human wave in the stands, their movements awkward but enthusiastic. Humans cheered them on, teaching them the timing. We were so focused on achieving perfect peace, White continued, that we forgot the value of positive competition. We thought all conflict was dangerous, but humans showed us that channeled competition can drive progress while bringing people together. A commotion drew their attention to the basketball court. An alien team had just won their first game against a human team. Instead of gloating, they were all taking pictures together, sharing water, and teaching each other their respective victory celebrations. Look there, Blue pointed to where Emma, the chocolate-sharing girl from their first meeting, was teaching a group of alien children how to make friendship bracelets. She's still building bridges. White smiled. Sometimes the youngest ones understand the most important things. He looked down at his own friendship bracelet, now a symbol of his role as Earth's primary diplomatic contact. The day continued with more cultural exchanges. Humans taught aliens about sports, music, and art. Aliens shared their technology, science, and philosophy. Both species found themselves growing and learning in ways they never expected. As the sun set, the stadium lights came on for the first ever Human-Alien Unity Games. Teams were mixed, with both species playing together. The rules were new, combining elements from both cultures. Nobody really cared who won. The joy was in playing together. Blue made his final entry in the cultural database. Today marks not just the beginning of Earth's membership in the galactic community, but the start of a new approach to civilization. Humans taught us that true strength lies not in avoiding conflict or embracing it blindly, but in knowing how to transform it into something that brings us together. He watched as Emma led a group of alien children in a game of duck, duck, goose, their laughter echoing through the stadium. Sometimes, he wrote, the greatest wisdom comes from the simplest gestures, like sharing chocolate with a stranger or teaching a friend how to play. 3 days after the chocolate-sharing incident, Observer Blue stood before the Galactic Council again. This time, his presentation was different. The chamber was more relaxed, with several council members actually holding cups of human tea and coffee, new habits they had picked up during their brief stay on Earth. Honorable Council, Blue began. I want to show you something we missed in our initial assessment of humanity. He gestured, and the screens came to life. The first image showed a human sports stadium. We originally saw this as a combat arena, Blue explained. But watch what happens after their games. The footage showed players from opposing teams shaking hands, hugging, and sharing meals together. In one clip, a winning team helped raise money for a player on the losing team whose family member was sick. Council member Red shifted uncomfortably. But they still engage in physical combat during these games. Yes, Blue agreed, and that's what makes them remarkable. Humans can separate competition from hatred. They understand that you can fight hard against someone without being enemies. The screens changed to show different scenes. Children learning to play chess, scientists competing for research grants, but sharing their findings, companies competing in markets while collaborating on environmental protection. Their competition drives them to improve, Blue continued, but their cooperation helps them survive. They've learned to use both. White leaned forward, interested. Show us more about how they teach their young. Blue displayed footage from human schools. They encourage their children to compete in academics, sports, and arts, but they also teach them to work in teams, help others, and show good sportsmanship. The council watched as human children competed fiercely in a race, then helped a fallen competitor finish. They saw students competing for grades while forming study groups to help each other learn. Most fascinating, Blue said, is how they turn competition into celebration. He showed clips of the Olympics, where athletes from different nations lived together, shared meals, and formed friendships while competing for medals. Purple raised her hand. But what about their violent entertainment? The fighting sports. Blue nodded and played a clip of a boxing match. Yes, they have combat sports. But look closer. The video showed the fighters hugging after the match, showing respect, their former aggression completely gone. These aren't signs of violence, Blue explained. They're demonstrations of skill, discipline, and mutual respect. The humans have taken their aggressive impulses and turned them into something that brings people together. The screens then showed global sports events, the World Cup, the Olympics, international championships. Millions of humans gathered, competing yet celebrating together. When we first saw these gatherings, Blue continued, we thought they were dangerous mob activities. Now I understand there's something else entirely. They're celebrations of human achievement, opportunities for different cultures to meet and learn from each other. White stood up. Observer Blue, are you suggesting we were wrong about humanity? Yes, Blue replied firmly. We saw their complexity as a weakness, their competitive nature as a threat. But these are their strengths. They compete to improve, cooperate to survive, and somehow manage to do both at once. He showed final clips. Humans working together after natural disasters, international aid efforts, global scientific collaborations, all while maintaining their competitive sports and games. They don't need to prove their peaceful nature to us, Blue concluded. They prove it every day by choosing when to compete and when to cooperate. Their violence isn't random. It's channeled into sports and games. Their competition isn't destructive. It drives progress while bringing them together. The council chamber was quiet as they absorbed this new understanding. Finally, White spoke. We came to test humanity, but perhaps they have tested us instead. Tested our ability to understand a species different from ourselves. Blue nodded. The little girl with the chocolate understood something we didn't. Sharing doesn't make you weak. Competition doesn't make you violent. Humanity has learned to balance both, and that's what makes them unique. The council members looked at each other, then at their cups of human beverages, simple symbols of shared culture that had already begun to change their own behaviors. Perhaps, White said thoughtfully, It's time we learned from humanity instead of judging them. The council was beginning to understand that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their technology or their physical capabilities, but in their ability to be both competitive and cooperative, both fierce and kind, both individual and united. The story of humanity's entry into the galactic community would be remembered not for any great battles or diplomatic triumphs, but for a child's simple act of sharing that helped two civilizations understand each other. It was, in the end, the most human victory of all.